Hello YouTube! Today we are going to talk about Orlando di Lasso, one of the most famous composers to have lived in Munich. And since this is my last video from Munich, I thought it was appropriate. Crazy how the time has flown. If you haven't heard of Orlando di Lasso, that's okay, I guess. He's one of my favorite composers, particularly of his era, the 16th century. He wrote a very diverse wealth of music in many different languages and many different styles. His counterpoint, and if you need help remembering what that is, just click where my face currently is, was more revolutionary than most of his contemporaries, and he really pushed the boundaries of music at the time. Today, we have over 2,000 surviving pieces of his work, and that's a lot of years for that music to survive. And we know that there was a lot of music that didn't survive. Crazy. But let's talk about something a little bit more interesting than his compositional style, because this is becoming a gossip channel, apparently. Munich is very proud to have hosted Lasso, and there's a great statue of him in Odeonsplatz. You may have noticed that there's a lot of decorations at the bottom of the statue, and I wish that I could say that those were for Orlando di Lasso, but it's actually a makeshift memorial for Michael Jackson. Lasso's statue is right in front of a really, really famous hotel, and anytime Michael Jackson came to Munich, he stayed at that hotel. So after he died and people were looking for a place where they could memorialize him, they were like, oh look, there's a statue of a musician right outside the hotel that he used to stay at. Let's make that his memorial. I guess they thought it was an appropriate place. Lasso's memory is not unloved, however. The location where his house used to exist is actually now a beer house, of course, called the Orlando House, obviously named for him. His house was right in front of the Hofbräuhaus, which is probably a really cool location to have lived in. You go, Orlando. Anyway, so due to Lasso's immense fame during his lifetime, this legend sprung up about his childhood. It is a fact that when he was a child, he sang in the boy choir of St. Nicholas in Mons. Legend has it that his voice was so pure and beautiful that he was kidnapped by other church choirs 3 times. The story quickly permeated throughout European society, and it's kind of unclear whether or not it's actually true. I've heard about bad things happening to choir boys, but being kidnapped because your voice is so beautiful is definitely not one of those stories I've heard. While most of his famous works are religious, there are quite a few secular pieces with some very rowdy and sexual texts. For example, in the madrigal Madonna Mia Cara, there's a line that goes like this. When I go hunting, I hunt with the falcon, and I'll bring you a woodcock as fat as a kidney. And if you didn't get the subtlety of that line, here's another. If you'll love me, I won't be lazy. I will all night and thrust like a ram. He even wrote a French chanson for 4 voices called Un jeune moine est sorti du couvent. That begins with, a young monk left his monastery, met a nicely built little nun, and decided to ask her if she'd like to ring his bell. As you can tell, it quickly goes downhill from there. We have been listening to recordings of the madrigals, Madonna Mia Cara, and Alla Piacalla. And if you have any questions or want to see the full text of these pieces, put it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, if you learned something new, please give me a thumbs up and share amongst your friends. I'm off to study for my final exam and pack my bags. I'll see you next week when I come to you from California. Ciao! Musicology.